welcome Ben Harris-Quinney, who is valiantly battled to get here this evening to conclude the case for the proposition.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. My Lord, ladies and gentlemen, very happy to be back at Durham, which seems to be, from my perspective, producing some of the brightest young minds in the country. I got here late because, quite rightly, the union likes to keep us right-wing loons away from the festivities as much as possible. What bastion of liberal sensibility are we seeking to offend tonight? We've had Brexit, surely we must be happy with that. The United Nations is nothing sacred. Of course, the United Nations began as the League of Nations, with simple, focused, and I would argue laudable aims: greater dialogue between nations to prevent war. Those aims, laudable as they were, failed rather spectacularly with World War II. And because of that, the great and the good decided that the League had to expand its aims and operations, and the UN was born. Since, the organisation has grown and stratified exponentially, with directives and resolutions on sustainability, gender, economics, air quality. It has become less a forum for discussion to prevent conflict, and I would argue, indeed, more a pitch for global governance. I've been to the UN HQ in New York a few times. That's how seriously I take research for speeches at Durham. It's a towering behemoth, the thing. Restaurants, smoking areas, creches, meeting rooms. It costs billions, 500 billion, in fact, since its inception. $500 billion. Completely and utterly unaccountable to any member of the public. You might think, well, it's easy for someone of my great stature to stroll into the UN. You may ask, what about little old me? Well, in fact, just to get an internship, it takes 2 postgraduate degrees. That would not only preclude 99% of the world from working there, it would also preclude almost every Fortune 500 and FTSE 250 CEO, and almost every world leader from doing an internship. Since its inception, the UN has issued over 2,300 resolutions and made over 500 declarations. In my opinion, to no discernible effect, apart from a few notable examples. A few weeks ago, the UN issued a resolution on the death penalty, condemning the practice. Great news. That'll be the end of people being thrown off roofs in the Levant then. Of course it won't. Guess how many countries rescinded their law on the death penalty as a result? None. Even the US declined to support. And there's an important point there, because the United Nations is half funded by the United States. The UN oscillates between being another organ of US power and a mind-numbing squabble between dictators, amounting to nothing. John Kennedy also said, "He who seeks power riding the back of the tiger often ends up inside." As such, as the pivot of global power moves from west to east, under the current structure, its very existence is under threat. If it ceases to be in the US interests, it will be defunded and dissolved. We talk about Paris, US is out. We are not arguing for the UN to be defunded and dissolved. We are arguing for that to be avoided. The Cuban Missile Crisis was not solved at the UN, but process was moved along towards a peaceful solution. The failure of the UN, like so many other bloated carcasses of good intentions, is that it has become an unaccountable, opaque bureaucracy that has self-extended its reach and remit far beyond its initial stated purpose and ability. Unlike that other floating, bloated corpse, the EU, remember that? The UN doesn't even have limited boundaries of geography to which to restrict its operation. So much today is done in the name of being virtuous, but so often those in support are not seeking to achieve virtue, but seek only to signal their search, even if it must end in folly. These virtue signallers would rather be judged on their purported intentions as opposed to the reality of the outcome, their walk to the path to hell. Conservatives are often unpopular because we tell it like it is, and harsh realities are always less favoured than fanciful dreams. I don't dispute or disagree with the founding intentions of the United Nations. I dispute the merits of its reality and direction. The motion before us asks, is the UN failing, not has it failed? Today, the Union has a powerful choice. A vote here in opposition to the motion will not ensure its continuation in current form. It will pass, like most of the UN's work, without notice. But a motion that indicates this House is concerned that the UN is moving in the wrong direction, that like the EU it is becoming remote and oblique to the average person. Its operations and aims are expanding so as to lose focus on its founding principles. That motion from some of Britain's brightest young minds may gain notice. The UN in current form may be a good thing in theory, but we do not live in theory. We live in reality. And in reality, ideas are measured by their outcomes, not their intentions. Beyond just peace, I would argue the UN strays into inevitable disagreement. We arrogantly presume, as a liberal democracy, that the rest of the world is wrong if they don't agree with us. But entering in to a global forum on governance with the rest of the world means you're going to have figures like Robert Mugabe celebrated, means you're going to have nations like Saudi Arabia on the Women's Rights Commission. That's what happens if you go beyond just having a forum for peace. If, as I, you support the founding principles of the UN to provide a forum so that nation can speak peace unto nation, I ask you to send a signal for the United Nations to return to that focus and support the motion. Thank you.